Good evening, KZFR. How's everyone doing tonight? Well, KZFR is brought to you, or Right On Air, I should say, is made possible by the generous contributions of KZFR supporters and by A1 Brake and Alignment Specialists with over 20 years of experience in automotive care. A1 Brake and Alignment Services, all makes and models of cars, trucks, and off-road vehicles, and all forms of automotive maintenance and repair, including air conditioning. A1 Brake and Alignment is located at 824 Nord Avenue and can be reached at 894-1149. Well, hey everyone, this is going to be quite an interesting show. Let me actually double check what mics we have. I think we're all on different mics here, but we have some guests with us, which we've had before. Hannah and Kylene, let's check your mics.
Hi, thank you for having me back.
I can hear you. I cannot. Hold on. All right, now. Try one more time.
This is Kylene. How
Perfect.
are you doing, Kevin? All right.
All right. That just took me 7 tries to get down. Well, so usually we get it right into some readings with our show. If for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, this is a show where we have people submit to us works of art in the form of writing, obviously writing on air. And tonight's going to be a little bit different, but we are going to start it the same as usual with a submission, actually. So I'll read this submission, and then from there, I think it'll be pretty obvious what we're going to segue into. It's a little bit long, so buckle in, I guess. And this piece is by Lily Alski. She has written for us before. It's untitled, and here we go. Dear someone out there, why do you write? It's a cliche. It's the most cliche answer around, but it's also the most real thing I can possibly say. If you ask me, why do you write, Lily? All I can think is, why do you breathe? I write to live. I write to understand life, to feel it, to let the marvels and the tragedies and all the complicated feelings I behold to sink deep into my skin and become one with the elusive idea of me. I write because I'm a secret idealist. You see, there's this cynical part of me that incessantly whispers, you're alone, Lily. They don't get you, Lily. They feel nothing you do, and you feel nothing they do. Despite this, I'm terribly desperate for company. So much so it has become pathetic. Every day, I'm surrounded by people, but my true self remains alone. Through listening to your radio show, I've been encouraged by so many wonderful and relatable words from people I like to think are like me. There's something so special about relating to another soul who is living and breathing now in today's world. It's a miracle to learn that somewhere in the anonymous sea of faces around me, some people out there have both the capacity and desire to bring life to the intangible. These same people dare to display this to strangers. And that's what we are, you and I, strangers. I taste the word, and I hate it. I am so desperate to be more to you, and I want you to be so much more to me. I want to know you. I crave to know you, even. I crave for you to understand me, too, just for a fleeting moment in which we both realize we've submerged into something beyond us, something beyond humanity, something timeless and indescribable. Let me taste your tears so that my own might become sweeter. You see, this is what writing is to me. It's the pulse of my heart. It's my rhythm. It's a fish line casting into the ocean, a radio frequency seeking listeners somewhere in the abyss. In some ways, writing transcends art. It isn't something to be measured or rated. It isn't something that I can look at and critique, because any thought from the soul is beautiful. Your writing means the world to me because it is the outside world violently permeating my essence. It's my beacon of light in a dark, dark room full of my own depressions. I come to my only true point of this submission. Language is powerful. It's the most essential tool we have to dig into ourselves and expose what we are. It isn't to be judged. It isn't even to be critiqued. Words are to be felt and only felt. For this reason, I sometimes loathe literary analysis because it can be pretentious and can seek to downgrade the very feelings that lead a person to write. I want potential writers to know that the how and the way are mere details. At any rate, life isn't restricted to a simple classroom, and the words born from life aren't to be either. While I love the analyses on this show, I'd like to remind those hosting it and those listening of how important it is to be open to new forms and styles. Our world is messy, and our writing should be too. I beseech you, as formal as that sounds, to share something, anything from the inside with us all. No judgments, no superiority, just a little of your soul. It would be an honor to hear your voice. And please, if you hear the work of another, listen with your heart, not your ears and certainly not your brain. I imagine that's the most any writer could ask for. That said, I'm so happy and lucky to share these pieces with you all. I dream of my words meaning something to someone out there, and I hope your words will impact and change me forever too. Let's not make something so intrinsic and beautiful complicated. Let me start again. Dear someone, anyone out there, hear me that you might learn to love me. Teach me that I might learn to worship you. Lily. Whew!
Wow.
Yeah, pretty intense stuff. So I wanted to open with this piece because I actually was talking with her a while back, and she's like, does anyone ever respond to the show and talk about my writing or anyone's writing and stuff like that? And I thought, actually, we haven't really opened that up to people out there, and I think we did the last show, our last recording. We said, hey, come back and talk with us. But then I told her, well, give me a submission that you essentially explain what writing means to you. That way people know that this is meaningful to have this connection with people. And so she sent me back this, and I was like, this is going to be an awesome segment. So today's show is not going to be so much a reading of different writings. It's going to be a discussion of writing and kind of what it means to people out there, our analysis of it, how that is interpreted by other people, and really just the people here, how and why we write and why we started, really all those questions that I feel are pertinent to know about writers. So, yeah. I guess first question, I guess we'll do this mildly interview style so we can get the ball rolling here, but do you guys remember what you first wrote? And
Yes.
don't say the letter A, because I'm sure that's most people, but...
No, actually, it's funny you mentioned that because I just was reminded of being a young kid, and the very first thing I wrote in first grade, everyone always starts those stories, once upon a time, blah, blah, blah. I remember starting a story, and it goes, I woke up one morning to find myself, blah, blah, blah. I can't remember how the rest of it goes. But I just remember, if I think about now a first grader writing that, I was like, dang it, I had this in my heart. This has always been something I've wanted to do. And I remember I didn't realize what I'd done. I had no idea what I was doing at the time. But a teacher had brought it up to the class and was like, see how they started this story. And we were talking about earlier about, acclamations and stuff in ways in which sometimes you get, trophies for just participating,
Oh, yeah.
but that felt bigger than that. That felt like actually maybe this was what I was supposed to do. And it was because of that. And that was way back in first grade.
Wow.
Which is sad because back in 8th grade, I wrote a somewhat satirical piece and my teacher didn't get it and I failed the assignment
no.
and I didn't write for 3 years.
Wow.
That sounds really weird, but unless I had to for class, but I didn't. I gave up. But it's crazy how teachers have that influence. So me as a teacher, it's really unnerving. You could break someone's spirit.
It's like a connection to a soft spot, and if someone pokes it, it really hurts, I think.
Yeah, because to me, it's all I ever wanted to do was to write. That's all I've ever wanted to do. That's all I can sum it up as, even as a small child.
Yeah. What about you, Hannah?
I cannot remember. I'm not sure what my first piece was. I'm sure, like what you had, there's some back in elementary school, the stories, but I can't really remember my first piece. I know when I first really started consistently writing was my freshman year in high school when I joined a creative writing class.
Oh.
That teacher really kind of opened my eyes to the joys of writing, and so I think that's when I really started enjoying it.
It's like a lock and key. Just
Yes.
open the door right there. And then I guess as for me, oh man, I think the first piece I tried to write, legitimately actually have some meaning out there, was after I read Aragon by Christopher Paolini, I think. And going back, I find it hilarious because I wrote basically the story verbatim. I almost copied. I used the exact same plot line with different themes and slightly different characters in a different area. It wasn't wooded or something like that. But that was my first attempt, and it was really just kind of a copycat attempt. But it was engaging to me because in my mind, I think it was probably 8th grade for me, so I was 12 or 13, I think 13. And in my mind, I wasn't seeing that I was copying something. To me, it was just pure creation. And even though it was legitimate copying, if I had tried to publish something, it would have been in way much trouble. But it definitely opened up something for me. And I think since then I've written stuff that has probably strayed away from fiction and more towards discussion, meditations, I think you call them for the most part. And that's usually where I hit home on because that's where my soft spot is. I like to be understood, and I like to understand things, and I like people to understand me, and I like to understand them. And I think Lily touched on that piece really good too, where she said, oh boy, I have a giant paper here in front of me that is completely full, and I'm trying to pick out one line. Something about... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, this is where, when you make the notes in the margin, as a teacher, I would just say that you should have highlighted.
I should have.
Just teasing.
This is why you have 2 masters. You can tell me to correct my own note-taking. I think she said something about knowing you, and I want you to know me, because that's all I really care about. And she feels alone all the time, which, I mean, if you think about it literally, no one can get inside of your mind. They can't. And the only way we express what's in our mind is either, body language plays a huge part too, obviously, but it's primarily language, communication. And writing allows you to get it out there without any, at least first and foremost, without any, obstruction of someone else sitting there and looking at you while you're doing it. Because you can do it in private and do it in a way where you are very raw and very open, and then put it down on paper, and then that is kind of encompassed in like a pill form almost, and you can give it to someone, and it's completely you, 100%. And I think that's what she's trying to say. She's pouring out her soul, the deep parts of her, and she wants someone to recognize it and say, hey, you're not alone, I recognize it too.
I almost want to go against that too, because she says, I want you to look at it, but also don't look at it. There's this comment of, don't look at it with your brain, look at it with your heart. And, sometimes the heart and the brain actually have that same strumming, For me, as a reader of work, it usually goes to my heart first before my head. And so if something strums me wrong, that's usually when I go, oh, there's something about this I don't like. There's been amazing writers out there, and I'll read some of their work. Even David Sedaris, he's my absolute most favorite author of all time. And there's just some of his short pieces I'm just like, I don't like this. I don't want to say that, but we can't all be perfect, but that's just because in my heart, that's just not something that I wanted to read at the time. But everyone also changes their heart throughout time. So, a piece should always just be out there, whether or not someone likes it at that time. That's not to say that their mind or their heart might not change later. So I think the fear of writing is what it sounds like to me on some of that, is that people will judge. And that's, that's just what we are. We're humans, we like to do that.
Yeah.
So that was just my counter on.
No, totally fine. That's what we're here to discuss. I'll just tell you to get out. I agree. I think it really has to hit the spot that, it has to hit your heart, and then from there it's very fluid. Also, too, what I like about writing is when you write something, it's kind of like a snapshot of what you are right at that moment. And then you can go back and edit it, and you can change it, but if you don't edit it, it's what you are at that moment. What you're feeling, everything on there, it's kind of like a stamp, a time stamp almost.
I'm thinking about all my writing that hasn't been edited, and I'm just like, oh my God.
You can go back and when you reread certain things that you've done or that other people have done, certain phrases strike certain memories and feelings and emotions, and that to me is like evoking a memory almost. Sometimes it can evoke like a forward-thinking thing, like it evokes something new, but for me, when I read old stuff that I've done, I kind of get like waves of nostalgia of like what I felt in those moments and stuff, and Hannah's nodding.
Yes, I have done the same thing.
Candy.
Exactly. But one of my first pieces that I submitted to your show, I was looking back through my old stuff and reading it, and it hit home because I was not in a good place when I wrote a lot of that. And so, I was just reading it and just like, oh my gosh.
That actually brings back that snapshot of where you were at that time of writing it. Yeah, so that's a good point.
Actually, I was thinking about it when you said that too, because just like the next step, some people for therapy in writing and stuff like that will actually write notes to people about how they're feeling or to themselves, and then tear it up and burn it. And I feel in some ways that is so cathartic, because you're literally just expressing it in ways that no one is there to make you feel observed when you're expressing it. You can just vomit out on the paper and get it out there, and then get rid of it. And it's almost like emptying.
Images.
Yeah. Well, whoops, my bad.
Words are very powerful.
Yeah, words are very powerful. I guess the next question I've written down here is, why did you start writing? But yours was a class, Kylie.
Actually, it's funny that you said why, because in my head, as you were talking, I kept thinking, why do I write? And
Yes.
my idea is, when I said images, for me, I write because I like what I see usually. Or even if I don't like what I see, the challenge is how can I put into words what my eyeballs are seeing? And as a kid, so description is like my absolute most favorite thing to do. So for me, my why write is because I just want to somehow show you what I see. Because for some reason, I feel like the world is so beautiful in so many ways, and I get overwhelmed, and I want to say, look what I see. Can you see it too?
Yeah.
I've tried to take photos. I actually used to do photos here in Chico. A lot of them are hanging around.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but they're not anymore. Anyway, but I tried with the camera, and it never did what I could do with words. And I think that's just kind of always been my goal in life. How can I show you what I see?
Yeah. It was right to the same route that Lily was writing about. You want to say something, Anna?
Sure. I think the reason I started writing is that it's very therapeutic, like what you're saying. Just get it down on paper. It gets all that out from inside. You can just raw, unedited. And I cannot tell you how many pieces I've written just bawling, and then it turns into something. And you can look back on it and be like, well, all that pain turned into something beautiful.
Yeah.
And
It's
so
like a crystal almost.
exactly. It takes time to get there, but it's a good byproduct of all that pain.
Yeah. I actually, I have a blog somewhere on the internet, in the darkest parts of it that I don't tell anyone about. And I started that blog because I needed a place like that, just to kind of get it out there. And I did it for two reasons. Because, I mean, people who are probably listening could have said, well, you could just write it in a journal and no one would ever see it. But part of me wanted it to be seen, wanted someone to see that and go, oh, I know where you're coming from, but I didn't want it to be someone that I knew. I wanted it to be someone that I didn't know, because that connection, like most of my friends I can talk to about pretty much anything, but I wanted something that was from someone I didn't know. I wanted that raw connection to a stranger, like Lily says. Just someone else in the world tell me that things are the same in your head as the same as mine. And that was my place where I kind of crystallized those thoughts. And there's actually I think I have 10 or 11 posts on there. And you can track major life events that I had and different types of word usage and stuff that I did if you just go through and read it. Which to me is really profound, and I can kind of track my mental, I guess, stability going through it or something like that.
I love that you say that, because I think back now and kind of going through some of the things I've been going through. I actually went back to journals, and you forget you write things. You look back oh my God, you're tormented.
Yeah.
David Sedaris, actually, his newest book. I'm not. I'm just saying, trying to promote over here.
She's getting paid.
I know, I'm getting paid for this. His newest book is actually his journal entries. Oh. And they're brilliant. The last time he came into town, he was reading from it. And it was like, God, this guy's just so brilliant. We write all the time without realizing it. And if we go back, sometimes we can find who we were at that moment. I have napkins, and because I always write when I drive, because music inspires me. And so I'm driving and knee on the steering wheel and, napkin on my lap and everything's all squeezed. Half the time I can't read it later, but it's
I'm never carpooling with you.
Yeah, don't ever. Or what I'll say is write that down.
Yeah,
anyone who's in the ar, here's me go, good, write that down.
Wow, very cool. Yeah, I guess that kind of answers that question for everyone. Are there, this one I was thinking of right before the show, and I kind of like it. Are there, and this is, again, getting to the heart of the matter, I promise I'll say the question eventually, are there recurring themes in your writings?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like I said, a lot of mine is therapeutic, so it's very negative a lot of times. So that tends to be a constant theme, because it's just a way to get all that negativity out and do something productive with it. So that tends to be a pretty constant theme in my work. You won't find very many happy look at the butterfly pieces in my journals and notebooks, but that seems to be a constant. Yeah.
I don't know if I necessarily have themes, but I do have ways in which I write certain things. And it's funny because I had a friend asking me, I want to write this story, and it was a nonfiction piece. And my instinct in nonfiction is to not do it in chronological order. I bounce around. For me to tell the same story I've already lived in a chronological order is maddening, and I'll rip my hair out. So for me, I have to bounce around and kind of put pieces together. But when I write a fiction piece, I can write from beginning to end just like that. So I don't know how to explain or why I do that, but I did learn that in my master's program. Thank you, Chico State, for that. And a lot of my themes are mostly like, actually, I don't know if I don't do themes. I don't do well with themes, but I definitely do a lot of like description. I do certain things that are habitual, like habits. You know, the habit of either writing where you can taste it and see it. I try really hard not to do abstract because I always push against it. I say this every show. People want to strangle me, but I can't help it because, again, I want to be able to be, and maybe that's just where I come from when I write. I want to show everyone, let me show you, look at this, and point at it, and I want you to be able to taste it and touch it and feel it. And I guess maybe that's what I expect in work. And, you know, and if we're going to talk about heart in work, that's what I look for. Where's your heart? And what happens is when I see abstractness, I see the absolute lack of heart, because in my head what's happening is you're so afraid of putting your heart out there, you go around it and use a word like she or he or that or it, rather than saying, you know, John with the brown hair or Sarah with the, you know, honey brown eyes. You know, see the difference in that. If you say she, or again Sarah with the honey brown eyes, you have these people that you can now look at, and with the second you see their eyes, you're there. You touch them, you're there in their life. And so that's why for me, you know, that those solid, you know, those concrete images to me make everything right there. So anyway, I didn't mean to go on a tangent. I got really excited.
This is what we're here for.
I think that's one of the reasons why I love writing and reading other people's work, because you get to see how their mind works.
Yeah.
Like you say that you like the concrete things, but other people, they just are very abstract thinkers. Like just everyday life is a very abstract thing for them. So it's interesting. You get little snapshots of how their brain works and how they go through life. And so you almost get to know them as a person through their writing, even if their writing is not about them at all.
I didn't think about, that's true. Because a lot of times if we get a piece, and I can usually tell what they're trying, I can always see, and not always, but majority of the time I can tell with an author when there's something that's really painful they start to write about, because they start to pull away from that topic, and it starts to become, again, you know, certain words, certain ways in which they write it, they start to pull away as if they're afraid of it, which is so surprising. That's why sometimes fiction is a lot stronger than nonfiction, because nonfiction is always like, ooh, I don't want people to know who I really am. And it's that when you write, you're literally bearing your soul. And to me, that's why I think it's so beautiful when I hear those concrete things, because you just showed me exactly what you saw in that heartbreak. And that just breaks my heart, you know. And I want to be where the author is and what they're seeing and feeling, because I love them. I love writers. This is not an easy gig. This is real hard to do, you know. So I guess maybe that's what maybe I'm trying to pull something out of people that I want them to feel it like I feel it. If maybe that sounds crazy pants, but
it's to each their own, pretty much.
Yeah, but it's nice because then sometimes, even if you don't always necessarily enjoy the style of writing, like because you want more, but then when you find an author who writes like you think, it just makes it that much nicer. Yeah, because you just have that automatic connection of, you think very similar, and even if it's completely different topics, just the writing style can make that connection.
That's so true. I love that. That's a great point.
I think I like the ambiguity, honestly. I think it's for me, it's almost like a test if I write ambiguous, in a sense that I want someone to be able to understand how I interpret it, because everything in my mind for me is very abstract. I speak in a lot of metaphors and stuff like that, and if I'm not allowed to convey that way, it's frustrating to me.
Not allowed? How are you not allowed to write that way?
Well,
you mean like if I was your teacher?
No, not I'm saying if I have to break it down in a sense where I essentially am like being overly explicit to make sure that they understand it. To me, it feels like I'm coming down to a level where I'm like, okay, I'm talking about this one subject and I have to code and rearrange it in a completely different way to give you this subject, when in reality I want to talk about it in the way that I see it. And that that's the abstract for me.
Yeah,
'Cause
and that's
everything
okay.
has
That's
multiple
a beautiful part. There's like that spectrum of, here's a bird. What kind of, you can say bird, and that's beautiful. You leave it open to whoever to say, to decide what it is, and then you could narrow it down to the pink flamingo.
Yeah.
You can't think of anything else other than the pink flamingo. So, and I guess that's what there is, that really beautiful spectrum, and that's what's cool, is being able to use that's to you know what it is, it's a manipulation. You get to use these words to help people see what you want them to see, which again, if you want to be abstract, that means you let them see whatever you feel they want to see with this. So there is a beauty to that. Yeah, so that's totally it.
And it's almost like a trust fall for me too, because sometimes they miss it completely. I'm like, man, but also when it's ambiguous enough, and we're running out of time here, we actually, this is cool because we didn't plan most of this conversation. We wanted to kind of go into it naturally, and we weren't sure we were going to have enough to talk about, and now we're like right at the end. But when it's ambiguous for me, or when I write like with my writing style, when they interpret it a different way, I see them. That's what I love about it, because I have something that I wish to express, but when I give it to them and they give it back to me and it's something completely different, and I go, whoa, that's them. That's them seeing this. That's entirely what they're seeing. That's their worldview, and that is profound to me. But I mean, like you said, it's on a spectrum. Everything, this whole writing thing, is just getting yourself out there. However you express it, in the explicit, in the ambiguous, in poems and rhymes and verses and anything. And that's the best part about all of this.
I feel like I have control issues as we're talking here, because I'm like, I want you to see the pink flamingo, not just a bird,
Next show, we're going to delve into that and pull it out. It'll just be you, Kylie.
Well, it's like looking at clouds. Some people see just the types of clouds. Other people see images in the clouds. So it's the same way with writing. Some people just see what's there on the paper, and other people look deeper and see pictures in the words. So it's interesting.
That was beautiful, Hannah. I have to state that.
Well,
that was a great use of words.
It was. There we go. We'll not have you submit a picture next time and describe it. Yeah, I mean, I wish we had like another hour and a half to talk about this, because there's so much more that we could get into, like the nuances of things and just... anyways, so the whole point of this show was to give people an understanding of why we do this show, why people submit, why people want to submit, and what they're trying to do when they submit, trying to show themselves for this. And us as writers and people who appreciate the style just want to express that. They want to have those connections. And so if you're thinking of writing and want to write, you can always submit to us at write.onair@gmail.com.
That's WRITE.onair@gmail.com.
Yeah, and again, this is Writing on Air, and I am Kevin, and Kylie and Hannah are here.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
Thank you, Kevin. Always a pleasure.
All right, we'll catch you guys next time. Writing on Air is made possible by the generous contributions of KZFR supporters and by Harrison Daily Wright Accountancy Corporation in Chico. Harrison Daily Wright provides certified public accountants specializing in accounting and bookkeeping services, auditing, tax prep, and planning, management support, services for nonprofit organizations, and more. To reach Harrison Daily Wright, call 895-1209. Have a good night, everyone.